Alistair, thanks for coming along today to talk to me. I'm Alison Christie from the Coalition of Care and Support Providers in Scotland, and Alistair is here to talk about the rapid transition within his organisation to digital recruitment. And Alistair, just before we start the chat, would you like to just introduce yourself and a little bit about your organisation?
Yeah, Alison, thanks. So, hi everybody, my name's Alistair Dixon and I'm the Director of People and Technology for Quarriers. Quarriers are a large social care charity in Scotland. We employ about 1,600 staff across about 100 sites from the north of Scotland down into the Scottish borders. We provide a range of supports. We work with adults with learning disabilities, physical disabilities, children and young people, homeless services. We have the William Quarriers Epilepsy Centre. We have school-based services. We have. I could probably take the whole interview telling you all the different types of things we do, so I'll probably leave it there.
Okay, thanks very much, Alistair. So, significant workforce, and I would imagine that recruitment is an ongoing part of your role. But when you had to make the transition along with everyone else at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, were you confident that you had the skills and resources within your own organisation to make that transition?
I don't think any of us were necessarily confident on the early days of the pandemic. It was just very much a case of what do we need to do to survive? What do we need to do to continue? You would normally plan things, Alison, wouldn't you? You would do pilots, whereas we just switched things on and went with them. We're quite fortunate that we're quite well resourced with technology. All our services have access to IT, and we have an in-house IT system. So really, we realised very early doors that we had to continue getting new staff into the organisation, and we had to support the staff that were already in the organisation. So it was very much just how are we going to do this and how are we going to keep things moving.
So when you say how are we going to do this, what were the biggest challenges that you faced when you realised that obviously all of your recruitment would have to be carried out remotely?
That was the main challenge. We couldn't have people in the same room. We have worked very hard over the last couple of years to streamline our recruitment process. So in some ways that created us some opportunities, but we had to think, how can we do this complying with the physical distancing, guidance that was all we had to comply with. So really what we did was we spoke to our services. We engaged with our managers about ideas we had and would this work for them. And initially managers understandably were kind of reluctant in terms of, can I do an interview over Teams? How can we do the other activities we would normally do through recruitment? So we tried to support our services by introducing an emergency safer recruitment policy, which was really to get us through the pandemic. We brought it in for a 3-month period initially, and we extended it for a couple of additional months just to allow us to keep recruiting. So it was really about talking to our services and understanding what their needs were, and how locally we could match them in. We had the additional complexity of all our recruitment and resourcing team were all home working as well. So, people were all over the country linking in through the technology that's available. And really just by understanding where everybody needed to get to, we established what we thought would work. There's always a reluctance that the candidates, anybody you're trying to target, you don't want to restrict how people can access and contact you. But we just know that people have phones and tablets and different devices that they can make contact with. So because we were able to support the technology on our networks, it's easy for people to dial in. So, we did some pilots of team-based interviews, and, they maybe weren't what we would ideally want, but they were enough a lot better than other alternatives. And I think for me, key was a really brave decision that we took in Quarriers to continue recruiting right through the pandemic. I know a lot of other providers and employers weren't able to do that, but we thought, no, we need to keep recruiting, because if we stop doing that, it's only going to cause problems.
You mentioned, Alistair, that you had sort of considered, or you had streamlined your recruitment processes and you put in place your emergency safer recruitment guidance. But just on reflection now, what do you think have been, or have there been any benefits to your recruitment processes by this transition to remote and digital recruitment?
So I think not only for our recruitment processes, but for our wider organisational processes, we've had our eyes opened up to what the technology can do. I mentioned earlier on that we support services in Aberdeen or in Moray or Aberdeenshire, down in the Scottish borders, or even parts of Southern Ayrshire are quite a distance away from our headquarters. Now, we have this view that all these services should have the same support irrespective of where they're located. But just in terms of being able to quickly dial in and speak to people, the Teams technology has been amazing. We also, like many others, all our head office support staff are working from home, and we would probably have spent 2 or 3 years planning how we would do that. Literally over the course of a couple of days, the decision was made, in advance of the first lockdown, to tell everybody to go home. So it was a very live, dynamic, experience. So we're looking at how that's going to, impact on the organisation next year and moving on. So it absolutely is going to completely change the way we run the organisation and we communicate with each other.
Obviously, at the start of the pandemic, you said that, you just got on with things. But looking to the future, when you're thinking about your future recruitment, marketing and campaigns, is there anything that is different or specific to the digital recruitment campaign than you would have done in the past, in real life in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose if I split it into how we attract candidates and then how we safely onboard them, we were already developing our online presence, and we'd been making use of some what I thought were very good videos and photography. I think our Care to Join Us campaign and brand is a very bold campaign, and I think it's it's very well recognised in the sector. We won the best recruitment advert award at the S1 Jobs last year for that as well. So we know it's very vibrant. What we tried to do this time was we already had a sort of vision of where we were going for the next sort of 6 to 12 months. So we continued with that. And we went with a new animated campaign over the course of the pandemic, where we tried to show what the reality of working in social care is like by animations. So we had 3 different versions of interactions with care staff and different people we support. And I know I'm biased, but I thought it was terrific. It was really, really good. And that created a lot of interest. And we got, several hundred people contacting us wanting to work on the back of that. The second part of the question relates to then what we do back office. Normally we would shortlist people and invite them into, assessment centres, and they would meet the people we support, and we would do a range of activities. Well, we couldn't do that in the pandemic, so we were using the Teams and other technologies like that to, interact with people digitally. It still gives you a good feel. You can see the person's face, you can see their reaction. You can have a really good discussion and a good dialogue. But what we did recognise that we might not get every decision right. So, we build in safety nets in terms of probationary periods and mandatory training and all the different supports, which some of which, to be fair, have to be more remote than you would ideally like as well. So there's a recognition that a lot of people, we were targeting people who might have been furloughed or who might have lost their jobs in another sector and were new to care. So that strategy is not without its risks, because not everybody, will be comfortable working in care. So one of the things I'm most pleased about was right at the height of the pandemic, we offered 3-month temporary contracts. Really, that was just to make it easy for people to come in, and we thought a lot of those folks would want to go back to their other job at the end of the 3 months. Well, of that 65 people, 75% of them are still working with us today. So that's been that's a real unintended bonus that we got a pool of about 50 people that we might not otherwise have got. And that's been really great. It meant we didn't have to use agency staff, whereas we might have done before. We were able to, plug any gaps that we had internally.
Obviously, that's been very successful for you, but what do you think has contributed to that success? What was it you think that encouraged those people to stay with your organisation?
I think it's actually being in and doing the job. I mean, anytime you speak to a care worker, what's the one thing they speak most about is it's the actual people that they work with. We know nobody comes into care because it's a well-paid job, because we know care staff don't get paid what they're worth. It's making the difference. It's seeing the positive impacts of their work. I mean, I cannot speak highly enough for our frontline care staff through the pandemic. What they've done has been absolutely amazing, and we've got some absolutely out of this world examples of commitment where care workers have actually put the people they work with, the people they support, ahead of their own families. People moving out their own homes just so that they're not putting anybody at risk. So it's the values, it's the bond, it's the passion that people build with the individuals that they spend so long with. That's absolutely the key thing for me.
And I think that's great to hear, Alistair, and it's something that we've heard throughout from all of our members within the voluntary sector. And I don't know that we'll ever fully know the extent to which this particular workforce went above and beyond throughout the pandemic. But we certainly do know that it's happened, and it's great to hear that it's happened. But just going back a little bit, you talked about, obviously the organisation would have to, or in the process of rethinking how you will operate in the future. But do you think that remote recruitment and support is here to stay within your organisation?
It's something that we now have. We know it works, and we know we can do it. So, I think it will be part of our working as we go forward. I think there's always a time and a place in an ideal situation for human interaction, two people meeting face to face. But we've just had the opportunities opened up to us, and we've seen how efficient and how effective it can be. So, in general, just in terms of our ability to connect and communicate with colleagues within the organisation, it's so efficient, and you can cut out a lot of time in between meetings and travel time when you're communicating. But we recognise it's also not been without its challenges, with everybody working from home, and there has been an element of isolation. And it's really, really important that our managers are engaging with their staff who are working from home. And, again, I've seen some really creative stuff, just really nice things like, team meetings and, having quizzes and virtual coffee mornings and lots of supportive things, just making sure everybody's okay. Folks just phoning and checking in. And, even this week, Ron, our CEO, and Andy, our deputy CEO, they've been calling all our services just to say hi and how are you, and is there anything you need? And it's just be things like this that I think make such a difference.
That's really great to hear. We've always known that third sector providers really do value their workforces, and they show that they value their workforces. But just before we finish up, Alistair, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today, do you have any last minute tips or words of advice, or something that you would want other providers to avoid?
Gosh, I think it's for me, it was everybody was in it together, and it was just about talking to your services and your managers and understanding their needs, and then be brave, try it. There's been a few things that we've tried, and they haven't necessarily worked the way we wanted, but that's fine. I would rather try it and it didn't work. And actually, some of the things that we have tried have really, really worked. I mean, I don't think I expected us to be able to recruit to the same extent that we were able to recruit through the pandemic. It would have been awful easy to think of all the reasons why you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. But actually, there was people out there who wanted to come and work. I mean, I think it helped a lot of the messages that were coming out about, volunteering and supporting. So we were able to try and get people who wanted to volunteer or who wanted to work. So I think be brave. Social care has got a lot to offer as a career, and there's a lot of people out there who don't realise how good a worker they could become. So, just be brave, understand your organisation's need, and get your managers together and go for it.
Thanks very much, Alistair.